Good morning, good evening, whatever time you're watching this video. Welcome, my name's Callum and today we will be breaking down Eula. The reason why, as it's been over a week since the time of her release and maybe something like this happened to you.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, what is it, what is it? Oh my heart. Yeah! Oh my god! Oh my god! No way! What the hell? That was just a random temple!
Or perhaps since the time you've summoned for Eula, you now believe she's the best girl because of her... assets. Butte?
Boba.
I mean, we gotta face the facts. Eula has essentially power crept Mona in the, pump department. Or maybe you've seen the secret video on YouTube that no other YouTuber is willing to show out of fear of being demonetized. Look, whatever the reason you summon for Eula, I ain't gonna judge you, although Eula might. But regardless of why we summon for Eula, we are going to have to break down her kit, because it's a little more complicated than some people may have initially thought of. Essentially, this is a beginner's guide to how to play Eula, with the main focus will be on breaking down how her talents work, to which I'll be editing in slow motion in order to break everything down nice and clearly, and come up with a basic guide of how to play her in her rotation. And then we can go over the usual business of ideal 4 and 5 star weapons, artifacts, and finally team comp ideas and how to make the most of Eula in a team rotation. Hopefully by then we'll summarise whether Eula is worth summoning for in the event if there's still some people on the fence. Sounds good? Let's begin. We all know Eula is a 5-star cryo claymore that scales incredibly well with physical damage, so let's jump straight to the talents and break down her normal attacks. Her normal attacks are called the Farthonia's Blade. It is a 5-hitting combo, which is the only character other than Beidou who has this. Here we have hits 1, hits 2, hits 3, which counts as 2 hits, hits 4, and hit 5, where Eula slams her sword into the ground. It is a flashing looking combo, which actually has high scaling in terms of damage. Here is a glimpse of Eula's skills next to Deluxe, and as we can see, her normals are ever so slightly higher. Next up is her E skill, called the Isotide Vortex. By pressing E or trigger, Eula will do a Cryo Slash on an opponent. If it connects, she will create a stack of what is called a Grim Heart, which we can see with the sword icon above her head here. And now her cape will start glowing lighter from the dark blue it once was. A stack of Grim Hearts will provide Eula with a defense bonus and resistance to being interrupted. This defense is a flat 30% increase per stack, and it cannot be increased from upgrading her talent. After a cooldown of 4 seconds, you will be able to press the skill again, and thus can create the second and final stack of Grim Hearts, which can be demonstrated with the second sword icon above her head here, and also her cape is now glowing a nice snow white. It's important to know though that the Grim Heart stacks last for 18 seconds, but it doesn't mean that each stack has its own separate cooldown. What it is that the cooldown is reset each time you cast Grim Heart, and so after 18 seconds you will lose both stacks starting from when the second Grim Heart was cast. Also, to show that you can swap Eula out into another team member and come back, and both Grim Heart stacks are still there. So, now with both stacks, you decide to hold the Isotide Vortex. What will happen now is Eula will create a wider slash, which consumes all of her stacks of Grim Heart. And if it connects with whoever took the hit, they will have both their physical resistance and cryo resistance decreased by a 16% that will go up by 1% per talent upgrade. But when you do this, and if you are on level 20, you will also activate her first talent ascension, called the Roiling Rhyme, which, by consuming 2 stacks of Grim Heart and connecting the hit, a shattered Lightfall Sword will be created and immediately explode, which will do half of the basic damage of your own burst. This can be seen here in slow motion, showing that the Lightfall Sword appears and then explodes. Finally, we are at her burst, called the Glacial Illumination. It is a staggering 80 energy requirement, and this is where things get more complicated, so let's break this down. Starting off with her burst animation, Eula creates a gigantic ice slash that will deal cryo damage, shown here as skill damage, and as seen here. This then creates a Lightfall Sword, shown here. This sword is going to last for 7 seconds, and its length cannot be increased via upgrading her talent. The sword provides Eula with an increase to resistance upon interruption. After 7 seconds, the sword will detonate, causing a gigantic explosion of physical damage, shown here as the Lightfall Sword's base damage. The damage can be increased via charging the sword, seen here as damage per stack, which is done only whenever Eula connects her normal attacks, her skills, or burst, so no weapon procs. For example, the Icicle, created by the Snow Tomb Starsilver, will not contribute towards the charge, but it does mean that the Shattered Sword, created by the talent Roiling Rhyme, will contribute towards the charge as it is part of Eula's own skill set. The Lightfall Sword can only be charged every 0.1 seconds, preventing you from hitting multiple enemies at once as a means of charging the sword, and the sword has a maximum charge of up to 30 times, which is currently impossible. Basically meaning Eula will need to hit as many people as she can, as fast as she can, within a 0.1 second time frame in order to get as many charges / stacks as possible in order to maximise the big PP burst damage. The average player should roughly get between 12 to 13 charges per ult, though the way to get more would be via increasing Eula's attack speed, which currently can only be done via either specific weapons, characters, or abyss buffs. But please note that the cryo infliction is disastrous for Eula, as slowing her down will cause her to hit less to charge the burst, and so she will get less damage from the explosion. We can see as Eula's attacks connect, the Lightfall Sword grows in size as a visual indicator of Eula charging the sword. There is currently no other way of knowing how many stacks specifically Eula has gained, and so people can just tell how often the sword stacks by simply counting the amount of times Eula hits an opponent and then cross-referencing that with the damage at the end. A very important note is that you are able to manually detonate the Lightfall Sword, which can simply be done by swapping Eula out with someone else. A handy strategy to consider when if you want to aim for either a bigger group, want a faster clear, or kill a frickin' Whooper Flower before it runs away. We should bring up that her final Ascension talent is called the Wellspring of the Warlust, which, when Eula's burst is casted, the cooldown of her skill is reset and Eula will automatically gain 1 stack of Grimheart. This is vital to have as it provides you with the optimal way of combining her skill with her burst in order to maximise the damage in regards of her rotation, which I will show you now. So, start off the battle with Eula's burst fully energized and do 1 slash of her skill. This creates the first stack of Grimheart. If I follow up immediately with her burst, Eula will gain the second Grimheart stack, and now the cooldown of her skill has been reset, allowing me the opportunity to do her hold skill in order to lower the physical resistance of the enemy of my choice. Now I have 7 seconds in order to connect as many hits as possible to essentially the closest person to Eula in order to charge the Lightfall Sword with as many stacks as humanly possible. Within 7 seconds at any time, I can swap Eula out in order to detonate the Lightfall Sword prematurely, otherwise it's a matter of ensuring I can hit all my normal attacks to grow my Lightfall Sword so we can drop and explode a big PP damage. To conclude her talents, which should you upgrade or consider crowning? In my opinion, the choice of what to upgrade first is between her normal attacks or her bursts, as this depends on artifacts and how much energy recharge you have. We'll go more into this in the artifact section, but for now, if you have enough energy recharge to proc her burst often, I would upgrade her burst first, then normal, then skill. And if you lack the energy recharge, I would go normal first, then burst, then skill. You cannot afford to sleep on any of these skills, but when it comes to talents in total, I am happy with a 8-6-8 and would not consider crowning, as these are sacred resources that should only be used on your favourites. So, if Eula has won you over and has become your favourite, go for it. With that meaty part finally done, let's go over weapons. Basically, nice and simple, the best free-to-play 4-star option is the Snow Tomb Starsilver. Despite the archaic may do slightly more damage, the Snow Tomb Starsilver is almost tailor-made for Eula, as not only does it have incredible physical scaling, but the icicle that falls will increase if the opponent is hit with cryo, something Eula has complete control over. Also note that due to the physical uniqueness of the Snow Tomb, it allows more flexibility to give your archaic claymore to other claymore users if you have a Diluc, a Chongyun, a Beidou, etc. And also important to note is that the Snow Tomb Starsilver can be obtained very easily for completely free by just doing a quest. There are no billets or prototypes needed. Plus, come on, it looks great on her, and always, aesthetics over meta. I'll also shout out to both the Sacrificial Greatsword and the Varvonious Greatsword, as both weapons have energy recharge as their stat, and both weapons can produce more energy for Eula, with the Sacrificial resetting her cooldown and Varvonious generating more energy particles. But, as these weapons are more support based and Eula's cooldowns are quite nice for her skill, I don't personally recommend either of these two weapons. However, the more premium 4-star claymore, such as the Serpent Spine from the Battle Pass, which is probably the best 4-star weapon, as it has a crit rate stat which will very nicely help contribute towards a good Eula build, and its refinement has nice damage scaling provided that you can keep Eula shielded and safe. Also, quick to mention the Black Cliff Slasher, as it does have crit damage scaling, which again will help contribute towards an easier build, and also the attack gained based on the kill mobs is a nice refinement to have on your main DPS, to which I would expect Eula is. Now, onto the 5-star weapons. We have the choice between the Wolf's Gravestone, which is a fantastic weapon that will hugely spike Eula's attack, whilst the Skyward Pride has phenomenal blade beams that scale with physical damage, and its substat is Energy Recharge, which is a very, very welcome substat that Eula will need. As for the Song of Broken Wallets, I mean, come on man, this is a really tricky weapon and it's going to make Eula even more complicated to manage, and so the sword's going to need its own explanation to break down, and it's not like I'm ever going to get the weapon. So, the Song of Broken Pines! Yes, it is an amazing weapon with a staggering amount of base attack. I mean look, here is the Acrid of Avonia, and now look at the Song of Broken Pines. This is insane, but I do have an issue with its refinement and how it can clash with Eula's kit if you're not careful, so let's talk about why. Breaking down the Song of Broken Pines, when you hit an opponent with the sword, you gain 1 sigil as seen here. After you hit someone 4 times, you will automatically proc the weapon's effect, which will provide Eula and the party with an increase in attack and attack speed. So, if you got the Song of Broken Pines, the rotation from the above is almost the same, except you start off Eula with her skill, then do 3 normal attacks, and then go into a burst, so the next time you hit an opponent, you'll automatically trigger the weapon's effect.
Vengeance will be mine.
If you lack the energy recharge to have a burst ready, you are going to end up in what I call the disaster situation. Disaster situation is where you hit an enemy 4 times and trigger the weapon's effect before your burst is even fully charged. So now you have your attack speed increase without the burst, and probably by the time you end up with your burst ready, you are going to be in the 20-second weapon cooldown in order to trigger this weapon's effect again, leaving you either avoiding using Eula's attacks until her burst is ready, or suffer the consequences of complete and utter mismanagement. Meaning, you absolutely need to prioritize energy recharge with either artifacts or team comps with a Favonius weapon, cryo teammates, to ensure that you always have your burst ready for when your Song of Broken Pines is ready. Speaking of artifacts, let's start with the sets, as it really comes down to how willing are you to commit to Eula, because her best in slot artifact set is the Pale Flame, but you can quite happily settle for either a 2-piece Pale, 2-piece Bloodstained, a 2-piece Blood or Pale with a 2-piece Glad, or even a 4-piece Gladiator will do while you farm for a physical set, and always remember it is substats over sets, the holy trinity of subs, which are of course your crit rate, crit damage and energy recharge. Shout out to attack percent wherever it can be obtained, and elemental mastery as of now doesn't really matter for Eula because she's a physical character. As for what artifacts specifically, well, flowers and feathers are always the same. A physical goblet is the best, as physical is what Eula excels at, but attack can work if it has better subs. And finally, a crit hat, which of course if it is crit rate or damage will depend on the direction of your other subs. Keep in mind though that Eula naturally gets crit damage as her ascension, so she should be easier to build than average. Finally, we've got the conundrum of the sands, because though ideally you want attack sands as the bread and butter for most DPS characters, the reality for Eula, because her burst requires that whooping 80 energy if you want to consistently have a burst ready, especially if you have the Broken Pines and want to min-max that attack speed, then an energy recharge timepiece could be the piece for you, especially if you find one with amazing substats. Like in this example here, this is a Eula with an energy recharge timepiece who has a nice amount of attack percent to compensate. It ultimately comes down to how often do you want to guarantee your ult, and if you've been unlucky with your substats. But remember, you can pair Eula up with different team members, making energy recharge less of a hassle, and Eula's normals do such high numbers on average that you may end up killing everything before the Lightfall Sword even detonates. Speaking of team comps, I highly recommend one Electro and a second Cryo in your team. Your Electro character will provide Eula with Superconduct, and so Fischl is by far the best Electro character to pair with Eula, as Oz will provide constant Electro support, always ensuring that you Superconduct. Beidou can work if you give her a Favonius Claymore and with enough energy recharge to proc her ult fast enough. And even Lisa can work if you somehow lack either. For Cryo, the main goal is for the Cryo support to act as a battery for Eula and provide her with Cryo Resonance, a 15% crit rate increase if Eula hits someone afflicted with Cryo. Having Diona is the easy pick, as everyone should have hopefully gotten her from the event for free, and Diona can provide Eula with a shield and healing all in one unit. Give her the Favonius weapon, as everyone has at least one of this, and Diona will be producing an insane amount of energy to give to Eula, although a sacrificial bow does work wonders as well. Other picks would be Rosaria if you have one, especially with either a Favonius Lance or Deathmatch, as Rosaria can provide Eula with even more crit rate thanks to her own unique talent. Kaya can work as a great cryo support, but his cryo application is so good that you may need him in another team, let's say if an Abyss requires 2 cryo characters in separate teams. Avoid Chongyun like the plague, as his skill will convert Eula's basic attack into cryo, and this is only relevant to meme builds. Chi-Chi isn't ideal as she produces no energy for Eula. And Ganyu, well, is Ganyu. I mean, she is a phenomenal unit and a fantastic support, but she doesn't synergize with Eula that well, and the reality is she would just be your other main DPS. Your final pick is a freebie. Really, this is either a healer if you lack one, whoever is needed for the Abyss, or another character that can complement Eula. So, Xingyang can provide Eula with a shield, can use the Militive set if you have gotten one from farming Pale Flame, and is available in Eula's banner, so chances are you may have her, especially if you have her at C4, as it provides a physical shred on enemies. If you summon for Zhongli, he synergizes with Eula incredibly well. I mean, Zhongli synergizes with everyone because he's freaking amazing, but his incredible shield not only guarantees Eula's survival, it will shred 20% of physical and elemental resistance to any enemy nearby. You only need one Zhongli to work, and the bare minimum would be just to give him a black tassel with a full set of Militive for HP for an unkillable shield. Of course, obligatory Bennett mention says Bennett is the best 4-star and can be used with anyone. Unless you accidentally screwed up at C6, so all I can say to that is, whoa.
Could it break?
And my favourite unit who can work with Eula is Best Girl Jean, who is incredibly underrated, especially if you lucked out and have her at C2. C2 Jean provides even more attack speed than one Song of Broken Pines and is far easier to manage. All Jean needs to do is absorb any energy at any time to gain a 15% attack speed increase for 15 seconds, which is plenty of time for Eula to attack during her burst. Okay, we're done. So to conclude, wrapping this all up for those on the fence, should you summon for Eula? My opinion always when it comes to should you summon is only summon if you like the character once you're informed on how they work, and hopefully by now you've seen enough people demonstrate her kit, and hopefully this video has demonstrated that despite some of her complexity, she is easy to understand and can be considered quite fun. I do think she's good value if you're free to play, because you just need to give her the Snow Tombed as a weapon to work, and if you play since release, you should at least have one Fischl and one Diona, and that's 3/4 of her team. The uniqueness of that team means that characters who are more popular with more popular support, such as Bennett and Xing Shou, can be used in the other team for the Abyss. Though Eula definitely is not in the same league as Venti, Zhongli, Ganyu as the holy trinity of 5-stars in regards to the meta, and if you're free to play and Prima Gems are super scarce, this comes down to a case-by-case basis. I do feel that everyone needs to summon wisely based on who you already have and who do you need. So, if you already have 2 main DPSs that work in 2 teams and you're not a fan of Eula, then it is an easy skip. If you lack a second main DPS, or your second DPS is taking up supports that you need on the other team, then Eula could become your third physical DPS that over time you can build with the suggested weapons, talents, team comps and artifacts, and you are good to go. Hopefully that's clarified some bits and was easy enough to understand. I didn't want to go too in depth and bring math into this, as I know there are much smarter channels who can go into this depth for you. If you do have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them, and I'll make sure to reply and heart to every single one of them. Overall, I am happy with Eula and her incredible, luscious, double books! Yes! Yes, double books! Oh, I mean, I've just saved so much resin. Thank you ever so much in all your time in watching this video. I had a ton of fun making it, so I hope you all enjoyed watching it. Next up, hopefully I want to work on a grand review for patch 1.5 as it's coming to a close, and of course I will still work towards any Sovereign Teapot guides whenever they come about, and I will work on other videos that will focus on other characters. The most important final tip to share with you all before I go, as always, no one can ever top Jean as the best girl. Bye!